Okay guys, in this video we're going to be looking at the steps to solve quadratic equations by factoring, and then I'm also going to cover let's try one together in this video. So I'm going to zoom in here to the left, steps on how to solve quadratic equations by factoring. So the first part is, let's take a look. We kind of seen these, we saw this. What's going on with my pen here? Is my battery dead? Oh, there it goes. Let me see. Okay, here we go. Now we're good. So first this, because we see it's got 1, 2, 3 terms. This is a trinomial or a polynomial. But in order to solve by factoring, first we need to actually factor. So we can't solve this directly the way it is. We have to change it into another form. So the first step is we need to factor the equation, or in other words, find the factors. Okay, and remember, I covered this a couple times already that I've said factors is just the same as multiples. Okay, and I'm going to show you how to do that here in a bit. Number 2 is, once we factor or find the factors, we're going to set each factor. We're going to set each factor equal to 0. Another word for factors that we can use is terms. Okay, we'll see that in a bit. And then the last step, our winner here, is we're going to solve for the variables. Okay, so let's take a look at what does factoring actually mean. Well, when we covered special products or the FOIL method, remember we covered FOIL? It was the first, inner, outer, last, and it was a way that we saw how to multiply two binomials to give us a trinomial. So basically what we're going to see is what two terms, what times what gives me x squared plus 2x minus 8. So it's like what, question mark, what, parentheses mean multiply, what times what gives me this. So we have to figure out what two things multiplied together will give me x squared. Okay, so it's like when we used FOIL, but now we're going backwards. And the first thing we're going to do is, there's a few different ways to do this, but I'm going to do something that I learned. Someone, I think at Horizon High School, showed me this. We're going to start with our variable. So whatever your variable is, let me circle it here. See, it's an x squared and an x. That's our variable. So this equation is in terms of x. We're going to write that first. X and x. Okay. The next two things we got to figure out. We don't know yet. But I do know that I've got a 2. Now, how does it go? I've got a 2. I've got an 8. And something plus something needs to equal 2. And those same numbers, something times something, needs to equal negative 8. Okay, so I'm going to draw like an X. On the top, I write this term. On the bottom, I write this term. And then I'm going to figure out what numbers go in there. So what times what gives me 2, but when I multiply it gives me negative 8. So what plus what gives me 2? Well, 2 plus 2, 2 plus 1, 0 plus 2, but those two numbers multiplied will not give me 8. So what I need to do is say, okay, one's going to be negative and one's probably going to be positive. 2 and 4 give me 8. 2 times 4 gives me 8, but 2 times 4 is positive, so one of these needs to be negative, such that when I add them, I get a positive 2. So if I do negative 2 times 8, that gives me negative 8. If I add negative 2 plus 4, that gives me positive 2. So these two numbers in blue are my terms or my factors that go in here. And what this is x minus 2 times x plus 4 will give me x squared plus 2x minus 8. These are the terms that we need. Those are the factors. So this is a factor, and this is a factor. Okay, so there's two factors. Factor 1, factor 2. Now we got to set each one equal to 0. X minus 2 equals 0. X plus 4 equals 0. Then I'm going to solve for x as my last step, number 3. I've got a negative 2, so I add 2 to both sides. Those cancel. I'm left with x equals positive 2. That's one answer. Here I've got a positive 4, so I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides. Those cancel. X equals negative 4. That's my second answer. So how many solutions can we have? Well, we can have 1 or 2. Typically, for quadratics, there's almost always 2, but there are cases and examples we'll see where there's only one solution. I think I gave you one like that in the problem set. Another way that you can solve, I'm going to put this here on the side. This says another. Let me write it a little bit more clear. Another way, okay, besides x to find the factors. Let's take this constant, negative 8. What are the factors, or what times what gives me negative 8? 1, negative 8, negative 8 and 1, always. And then I'm going to keep writing. Another one is 2 and 4. I'm sorry, 2 and 4. Let me move this up a little bit so I have more space. Okay, find the factors of negative 8. What times what gives me negative 8? What times what gives me negative 8? Like I said, 1 and negative 8, negative 8, negative 1 and positive 8. We can also do 2 times 4, but that gives me 8, not negative, so one of these has to be negative. And 2, 4, 3, 6. I think that's it. So that means that one of these has to be the answer. Okay. For this one, we're looking for the constant term, we look for multiples. For this term, we look for additions. What plus what gives me 2? What plus what gives me 2? So from these factors, which ones that when you add is 1 minus 8? Is 1 minus 8 equal 2? No. Does negative 1 plus 8 give me 2? No. Does negative 2 plus 4 give me 2? Yes. Does 2 minus 4 give me positive 2? No. Okay, so that's how I came up with these as the factors. Negative 2 and 4. Excuse me, I apologize. So that's another way you can look at how to find the factors that go into here. Okay, let me know if you have questions. It's always a tough time trying to figure out the factoring part. So once you get the factoring, that's next step's kind of straightforward. Let's take a look at, let's solve one together. So we have 2x plus 3 times 4x minus 5. The other note that we need to be aware of, an important note, is to solve quadratic by factoring. The equation has to be, we have to set it equal to 0. Okay, it has to have an equal 0. So if you have a number, let's say I had 14 on this side, I'd have to make sure I bring it to the other side before I can solve it. Okay, so you can still solve quadratic equations even if there's a number other than 0, but for us to use this method to solve, all constants have to be moved to the other side. to the left side of the equation, and this has to be a 0. Okay, so let's think things to think about. Do we need to factor this? There's no common terms that we can take out of either of these terms. So the answer is no, we do not need to factor this first. It's already factored.